Hello, good morning, guys. It is Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Uh, and how are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. I hope that yesterday was okay for you guys. The market has been, in my opinion, has been very volatile. You know, bullish at the same time. Markets just to continue to grind higher. Looks like it's kind of ranging a bit, but in the end, grind higher. So, um, like myself, seeing a sell bias, having a sell bias because of my analysis, and I want to be a systematic trader, can be very difficult. Like I said last time, it's just taking longer to execute on trades, and partly because I've included a second trade in the day, um, and it's going for a higher return, and so it's requiring, um, even though the second trade is the profit is quite significant from the first, going from 16 ticks to 49 ticks is also requiring, in my opinion, is a significant amount of time to play out. And so that's something that I'm getting used to. But I kind of wrote it out, so I'm not wasting anybody's time. Um, so I'm just going to go ahead and read. I am very nervous about selling futures contracts, but it is what my analysis is telling me to do. As I mentioned last time, I do not want to trade based on emotion. I want to be a systematic trader. I have very specific rules in place. That said, I have to give credit to the bulls. They are very resilient. Yesterday I sold at 9:30 Eastern Time. I hit my first take profit at negative 16 ticks, then immediately entered a second trade aiming for negative 49 ticks. I remember the market pushing higher, almost reaching my stop loss. I thought to myself that the trade might fail, and considered how I would manage my emotions to avoid re-entering the market that day. To be honest, taking a loss would have been disappointing, as it would have brought my drawdown close to $200. For context, I think it would be under $200 actually. For context, I'm currently doing an evaluation with my funded futures. The profit target is 1,500 and my drawdown limit is 1,000. However, I held firm. The trade eventually reversed in my favor and hit my take profit after 1 hour and 7 minutes. I'm usually in and out quickly, but since incorporating a second take profit, with a higher return, trades now require more time to play out, something I'm still getting used to. Betting against the bulls in this market is difficult, but I believe in my system. Yesterday we saw the market recover from the lows and finish slightly higher on the day. I do plan to sell again at the open, not because of emotion, but because of my analysis and strategy, my edge. As I write this, I am a little nervous because this market seems determined to push higher. No matter how extreme sentiment may be, no matter how concerning the geopolitical situation appears, or what is happening domestically, markets continue to grind higher, and I respect that. Today is FOMC day, and I expect it to be uneventful. Most attention will likely be on the press conference, as this is Jerome Powell's last one as head of the FOMC. Whenever we expect him to say something significant, it usually turns out to be fairly routine and consistent with his usual messaging. However, the Q&A portion can introduce some uncertainty for the markets. It is midweek and I'm already exhausted, but the trades so far have been successful. My drawdown is now $448, up from $213 at the beginning of the week. I plan to risk $267, including commissions, to potentially net $219. As I'm writing this, something feels a bit off, maybe because I'm not used to sharing this publicly. Anyway, have a great trading day. So, yeah, that's exactly, this is how I feel, and and hopefully I can execute in the morning. I don't plan to trade. I don't trade on the FOMC press conference or Q&A. It's just something to watch from the audience. I don't like to trade that, but we'll see. I'm always interested to see the activity in the markets and how it turns out. But when it comes to him delivering his speech, it always seems, we all, I mean, at least when I listen to Bloomberg, it's like a big day, the FOMC day, and we think of, a major move, happening in the markets, and or maybe Jerome Powell saying something, that the audience wasn't anticipating, but then, he'll read from his paper, you know, straightforward, um, you know, in my case, uneventful until you get to the Q&A and they start asking questions, and sometimes you see the market react in a major way. But we will see, probably one of the questions is, does he plan to stay on the board? I believe that he can stay on the board until 2028. Or does he plan to, retire from the FOMC? From my understanding, they dropped the investigation on him. So I know that was one of his requirements in order to, in order to have Walsh elected. But I guess that I feel like that's going to be one of the questions that they ask. And yeah, so hopefully we get some actions in the market at the open, and if not, maybe we see some barcoding or some ranging. I don't know. It doesn't look like there's too much news in the markets at the moment, and I haven't listened to too much of the news this morning, so I'm gonna try to catch up before the market opens to see if there was anything of significance. Other than that, yeah, it's just one thing I wanted to point it out, how I mentioned in my journal, was just controlling my emotions. I as I was writing, and I thought about it yesterday, like, had it hit my stop loss, would I have had the strength, the emotion? I mean, would I have had the capability of just stepping away? I believe that my stop loss is enough room for a trade to play out. And I tell myself, if it hits your stop loss, that means it's something major to learn. It's not, oh, maybe if I move my stop loss and give it just a little bit of extra space, maybe the trade will reverse and go in my direction. I believe that my stop loss is significant enough, due to my back testing and me testing my strategy, that if it hits it, that I'm wrong. That not to what has happened and continues to happen, and something that I definitely work on, is that I'll continue to jump back in. Maybe I'll have, maybe there's some hope that the market is going to reverse and head in my direction. And then I'm even more disappointed because I'm taking more losses because I'm just wrong, So it's one thing that a trade hits my stop loss. It's another to compound the loss. I think that has been my major setback when either trading from my personal live accounts, or trying to be successful in the prop firm space, is that when I look back at my trades, had I cut my losses in half, I would have passed a phase, made it to the funded phase. But the thing is that when what has happened is that it hit my stop loss, and I'm so convicted on my analysis that I fail to realize that I'm just wrong, and just to step away. So I'm writing it and I'm sharing it out in public, and I'm kind of it's helping me understand that weakness, and that, you know, that I something that I can work on and become better at. Because it's not about hitting my stop loss. It's about compounding that by getting back into the market. Um, and yes, the market is very bullish right now. You know, yesterday was very interesting because, you know, at the open, like I said, it hit my first take profit, and then it kind of struggled to hit my second, and then it kind of the market started to fall. And you would think that, you know, it would just continue downward throughout the day, the U.S. Open, I mean, but, you know, it kind of reversed and finished slightly higher, at least slightly higher. So this market is resilient, you know. So you definitely have to. I definitely um, am just uncomfortable. I can't say be careful, because I'm trading based on my analysis, based on my strategy, and but does it make me feel uncomfortable? Yes, it does. You know, it definitely does. Like I said, it's taken longer to execute trades. Um, you know, there's been trades that have come close to my stop loss and then kind of change direction right at the last moment, you know, which is nerve wracking, you know. So definitely in an uncomfortable state at the moment, but I just continue to be disciplined with my approach. You know, make sure that I'm going over my strategy um, all the time. Even when I'm done executing my trades, whether I lose or win, I'm always going back and doing market replays, back testing. I think that's what they call back testing, and just running simulation over and over again um, on previous dates, you know, and just replaying it, refining my rules, you know, making things clearer and clearer to me, because over time I'm updating my rules, I'm changing things, I'm adding things, taking away things. So it's important that I continue to study my system so that it just flows. It's ingrained in me. It just flows within me. So anytime that, you know, when it's the next day, when the market closes and I have fresh data to perform, to run an analysis, you know, I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know exactly, you know, I can just, it's just in the back of my head, you know. So that requires just practice, practice, practice. Um, and then, yeah, of course, psychology. But I feel like psychology, you don't realize how important psychology is until you start being consistent. And this is my personal opinion. I didn't realize how important psychology was until I started become consistent. Like once I had a strategy that had, you know, an 84% um, consistency rate, acceptance rate, win rate, um, I started to realize that's, I mean, at that, psychology started to play a major um, factor, because like I was talking about earlier about, you know, when a trade would hit my stop loss, how I would go back in and then compound the loss, or just, you know, when you're having such consistency, you know, you like I spoke about last time, you'll have trades. I'll have a trade that, you know, is pretty much like a no trade, you know, day for me, because I only trade, you know, once or twice a day. And if, you know, tomorrow, for example, if I don't have any data to perform an analysis, I have to step away. You know, I can't trade on that day. But it's very hard, you know, when you're having consistency, when you feel on fire, that you'll start to like get emotional. You'll start justifying things. You'll start to, you know, feel overconfident. You start to maybe pay attention to headline news, thinking that you can, you know, make a trade based on momentum. You know, maybe you start feeling, maybe you're listening to live streams, hosts like I do daily, and, you know, maybe the host is saying something like, oh, this is touching VWAP, or, you're watching them trade live, and or they even say, "Oh, this is for sure is gonna go up." I see this trade. I hear a lot of stuff, really. Like when I listen to live hosts, that host these channels, and there's nothing against them. I respect them, and I appreciate them providing the content, because it's definitely helped me during my journey. Develop. I mean, learning about day trading. But thank God I have a very specific strategy that I train my brain for, because if not, you can be distracted and, start making trades based on antics, because you have a lot of people that are very intelligent, that sound very well, that have a lot of information, that know. I'm thinking of like the Trade Brigade channel on YouTube, and the gentleman is very intellectual. Like he knows how to draw up a chart immaculately. I'm just like, wow, this guy's incredible. But everybody makes a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake, and no matter how smart you sound, no matter how intelligent you are, no one's perfect. And so it's better to have a strategy. It's better for me to have my strategy that I can go back and practice and practice and practice all the time, and simulate, and than to just be listening to somebody and following their trade, following their stuff. Unless you can go back and back test their work. If you can go back and back test what they're saying, market replay whatever they're saying, whatever, then great. But if you can't, and you're just sitting there and they're saying that, oh, I think this is going to bounce off of VWAP, and if we push through VWAP, I anticipate this blasting to the moon. And then if it doesn't, you're like dumbfounded. Or maybe you trust these guys, and I'm talking about Benzinga as well. Like, they say so many things, and what happens if it doesn't do that? And you get into a 0 DTE call, or you do a futures trade on that, then you're out of luck. So it's good for entertainment for me. It's like, what, I like to have it in the background. I'm learning, and just seeing how other traders out there operate, because if I don't have a personal community while I'm chatting or texting, or with someone, this is kind of like these are like my buddies. These are like kind of like my friends, and it's like a community for me. So I'm, just seeing what's going on, how people are navigating this environment that we call day trading. So, I don't want to take anything away from anybody. It is very beneficial, I believe, but always put yourself in a position where you can backtest, market replay, test out a lot of these things, these indicators, these tips, these ways of going about trading. Prove it to yourself. And I'm telling you, I like to use Tradeovate or NinjaTrader, and I think as long as you have $1, you open an account with at least $1, you have free access to the market replay and simulate it, and live simulation. As long as you have over $1, they give you that. And to me, that's all you need, and you can go back and, back test on that particular day and see how it plays out, and I remind when I was developing my edge, it was like this. It's like this. I used to like playing this game. It was an app where they had two identical photos, but one photo was missing something very small, like very, very small. You had to like really search for it. Like maybe it was like they had a photo of the same person. On one hand, the person was wearing a ring. On the other, it wasn't. Or on one hand, the person had, there was a flower, a red flower, and then in the next, it was just like these small little things that you had to like look for. And I really feel like markets, or for example, like my strategy when I was developing my edge, it was like that. Like I would have two, like when I was starting off with doing my strategy, I would have two charts that would look identical. And the beginner me would be like, this looks the same as this. So I'm gonna go ahead and, if on that day the market did this, then I'm expecting on this day to do the same thing. And I was constantly disappointed. They looked identical, but they would have different outcomes, and it would drive me mad. And I would but what I realized is that I had to look closer. I had to really dig deeper than the surface and figure out, okay, you know, this is just, I'm just saying as an example. I'm not telling you exactly, but for example, maybe there's a plethora of indicators, on trading view and things like that. Maybe, to figure out the difference, maybe you can apply, you look at the indicator, maybe in the indicator, the Bollinger Band, I'm just using that as an example, the Bollinger Band, and on one particular photo is doing that, and the Bollinger Band on the second photo, even though it's identical, is doing something different. You're just trying to figure out what is different, because obviously they had different outcomes, so there's something different about them, even though they look on the surface identical. And I remember I kept doing that, and all the time I was finding something that was different, and I was able to refine my process and become better and better. It took me damn near 5 years to do it, because I was just taking these identical charts, and I'm just trying to figure out, what is different here? What is different here? Just kind of placing things under the microscope, trying to find different tools, indicators, try them out, test them out. If it didn't work, I would toss it. If it did, it would stay. And the next thing you know, I'm building a list of requirements, that stick, and so I hope you understand that, because I'm not used to speaking like this, sharing my thoughts. But anyways, not to drag on, I hope you guys have a good day. I hope that everyone is successful and that you can take something of use from this journal today. All right, have a great day. Bye bye.